You know, I love putting effort into things, but you know, for this, I think I'm just going to read off of the script from a Google Doc in front of me, and you're not going to say anything about it, because I don't want to memorize all that. All that. Alright, for the setting, in terms of the when, I don't think Bradbury gave a specific year, if I remember correctly. However, I know it's sometime post 1990 because of the two mentioned atomic wars that happened in the 90s. So it's sometime around there. If I haven't mentioned, it's in like a hypothetical future, you know, written in the early 50s. So in terms of the where, pretty much all of it takes place in Chicago or just outside of Chicago, which is established at the start, and then from then on out is just called the city. So I did have to go back for that because I... Alright, characters. The second meatiest chunk of the part. Main guy is some dude named Guy Montag. I would like to have a word with his parents. He's a fireman, one who burns books instead of putting out fires in buildings, because that's what they do in this universe, and that's what everyone's conditioned to believe that, you know, they've always done. But I think I'll get to that more when we get to the plot. And unsurprisingly, over the course of the book, he is progressively becoming more and more disillusioned with the establishment or the way things are. So he eventually... Again, we'll get to that when we get to the plot. He's also stuck in an estranged marriage with his wife. Speaking of... Mildred! Yippee! Okay, we're getting to her next. Mildred Montag, I'm sure... I would think that she shares a surname with her husband. I don't know. But she has no real personality, but that basically is her personality. She's a glimpse for the audience to see sort of what a normal person would be like in this dystopia, his universe, whatever the hell. She just sits around all day watching TV, and by TV I mean their walls in their parlor which interact with her, which, I'm gonna be honest, sounds kind of cool. Can I have that? When's that coming out? Okay. Who else we got? Yeah, that one weird kid that disappeared in part 1. Clarice McClellan, some girl in the beginning of part 1 who self-describes herself as 17 and crazy. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Side note. Do you guys think that, like, I would have a chance with her? Because I mean, I get she's not real, but that's never really been a deal breaker for me before. Yeah. I'm in love with this imaginary girl. Yeah. She's who essentially starts Montag on his whole anti-establishment arc throughout the book. You know, before she coincidentally died off screen. Screen? Off page. Off screen. See here, there's also Montag's boss, Beatty. Is that his Beatty? Is it really Beatty or is it something else? I'm gonna call him Beatty because I think that's funny as hell. He's a dick. Again, I'll elaborate more on him when we get to the plot summary. Last character I'll mention is Faber, this old retired professor that Montag sort of has as like a mentor for the last half of the book, I guess. He's kind of weird and almost paranoid, but he's chill. He's pretty chill. Oh my god, I am not looking forward to this. The plot summary. Okay, this is long. It's long. But I'll just get to it. Alright, let's see here. The book starts with Montag leaving work. Where he then runs into Clarice. Then we get a scene with a bunch of expositional dialogue, which sort of persists throughout the first part. When Montag gets home, he walks in on his wife, who just overdosed on sleeping pills. What a tone setter. So, I mean, he understandably calls 911, and they send, like, engineers to his house instead of, like, normal paramedics who just kind of take out all of her blood and then put in new blood. I don't really think that's how that works, but I'm not a medical student, and this book was written like 70 years ago, so whatever. And right before this, it's revealed Montag has something hidden in his vent, which we'll get to later. Yeah, this pattern of Montag just talking to Clarice and having a crappy relationship with his wife kind of persists until one of the inciting incidents where it's essentially just a routine little book burning. They go into somebody's house, take out all their book stuff, which are kerosene on, and burn it down, you know. But then the lady whose house it was insists on staying there. Tries to get her to leave. She doesn't. And then she lights it up herself, and which is like understandably messed with the guy. So that, an inciting incident that really pushed forward his character arc. I'm like, okay, I keep forgetting stuff. He also grabs a book from that house, kind of hides it, in his little jacket thing or under his sleeve, and then when he gets home, puts it under his pillow. And then around here is where Clarice dies. It's off screen, and then it's not really confirmed until later, and Montag just kind of realizes, oh, I haven't seen her in a minute. So it's kind of unclear exactly when that happens, but somewhere around here. So the next day, it might be the next day, I don't remember exactly, but I'll just go with the next day. Montag gets sick and calls in sick to work, essentially, and then Beatty, he comes around and then gives this really long, really wordy monologue, and man, look, it's good for world building, and I'm a sucker for good world building, but wow, dude, he talks too much. He talks way too much. He basically just sits there and he spills out the reason why books are banned, which I had been wondering up to that point, and it's explained in a decent enough way. It essentially is just an attempt to get rid of all sorts of discourse, to stick with one societal narrative and keep people happy, like dumb but happy. And then during all this, Mildred's trying to fluff Montag's pillow, and he's like, no, because he's got a book under there. And then she finds it, touches it, so she doesn't say anything, thank God. After he leaves, Montag and Mildred, Montag pulls all the books out of the vent, which is what was up there. You probably could have it, but that's how part one ends. They just pull all the books out of the vent and they start reading. I hope this mic isn't too sensitive. Anyway, alright. Part 2 is just full of Montag becoming progressively more anti-establishment, or whatever you would call it. I'll just go with that. One of the big developments in Part 2 is him seeking out Faber, who he had met in a public park about a year before, and he was acting all weird. And Montag remembers this, and he's like, oh, I should seek that guy out. He gave me his address or something. So he, goes to find him. And Faber's obviously really real paranoid. Understandably so. You're an old guy who has books in his house, who's all, and then this guy is a fireman comes to your door. Understandably, he gets a little freaked out. Yeah, Faber then, once he trusts him, gives him a little earpiece to basically just talk to him throughout everything. Oh yeah, and throughout this part, too, Montag just seems like he's going crazy. Like, say, when his wife had some of her friends over. He just goes out, whips out a book, and starts reading from it, like all weird and frantically, which obviously, unsurprisingly, gets him reported. His wife and a friend or two, they report him to his own boss. So when he goes to work the next day, he's kind of loopy. And when they go out to go do their job, admittedly it's not a very good job, but whatever, they're going to do their thing. They pull up to Montag's house, and which is where part 2 leaves off, and then we get to part 3. And Beetee basically makes Montag do it all himself without any kerosene. On top of that, Montag doesn't really have the option to just run, because the mechanical hound, who, oh my god, I haven't mentioned that thing yet, is just out and about and will get him if he tries to just... This is my favorite part, because I'm a sucker for violence. After Montag's done burning his own house down, he starts to get more and more, understandably fed up with Beetee. And during this whole confrontation, Beetee gives him a little slap in the face, knocking the little earpiece that Faber gave him out, and Faber's been talking to him this whole time, just pretty much just being obnoxious, really. And Beetee, grabs the thing, and shows intent to trace it back to Faber. So then that's basically the last straw for Montag. Takes the flamethrower, burns his own boss, and then kind of obviously he burns his other co-workers too. And then when the hound comes to get him, burns that, but not after getting got in the leg pretty good. So now Montag's obviously a fugitive, and the man starts running. And after just running aimlessly for a bit, he makes it to Faber's, and basically watches the own chase on TV while another hound brought in from another city goes around sniffing everywhere Montag's been. So Montag gets smell disguise, and then he dips. He just dips. After running for a bit, he makes it to the river, where he kind of hides under there until he gets washed up to shore, and then he just kind of just wandering around until he reaches the railroad tracks. Then once he reaches the railroad tracks, he starts walking along them out of the city, where he eventually sees fire down there, and that fire it's a dumpster fire, quite literally keeping... Is it a dumpster fire? It might be a bonfire. I imagine it's a dumpster fire. I don't remember. Around that fire, just a bunch of old guys, kind of like Faber, except they don't live in the city. And, they knew who Montag was. They had been watching The Chase 2 on this little... Oh my god, that water heater again. They had been watching The Chase 2. And while they're sitting there watching it, they get Montag, but they don't actually get Montag. They, just to end the chase satisfyingly for anybody watching, they just pick some random guy, maybe looks a little bit like him, and then they just kill that guy and say that they got Montag. I guess they just don't care about a guy that killed 3 guys and also damaged government property, but go off. Anyway, so these old guys, their whole shtick is each of them remembers part of a book, and luckily Montag kind of remembers part of a book. Or it doesn't have to be memorized in a traditional sense, because they also go on this long thing about how you never forget anything. I wish. Anyway, so yeah, these guys, they quickly take Montag in as one of them, and then they leave. And then this part, as they're walking away from the city, oh my god, you know what? I completely forgot. Okay, in the background of the entire book, there's also like a war that's been brewing, like behind, like just just some war. It's not specified with who or why, but you know, it's just it happens a lot. I guess. I mean, it happens a lot. As they're walking away, Chicago gets nuked behind them, and it's described in a weird way, where the bomb makes the city just weep. At least that's how I took it, which is kind of dumb. That's not how but I might have read it wrong. That's pretty much how the book ends, actually. They just kind of... Everyone died. Well, no, they don't. Like, the old guys in Montag, they don't die. But everyone left in the city, they're done. They're dead-zo. Actually, did Faber leave? Faber might have left. I should have, you know, went into less detail. Oh, that just shut off. I should have went into less detail, because I'm really showing how little I paid attention to that book. Alright, whatever. Ugh. What's left? Anyway, when it comes to POV, it's in third person. And there's not much else that I can add there. However, it's that weird third person where, despite the narrator not really being like a character and having no real stake in the story, it still follows Montag, and it's still from his point of view, though he's not the narrator. If you're picking up on it. Imagery? What the hell do they mean by imagery? The book doesn't have pictures. Yeah, so when it comes to imagery, Bradbury uses the most... I almost want to say the most out there, or almost the most confusing at times. What, representations? No, that's not it. He describes things in an almost very abstract way, even when it's the most basic stuff. But no, sometimes his imagery, if I'm picking up what imagery means right, I feel a little bad for anybody lacking reading comprehension, or just anyone who isn't the brightest trying to read the book. Yeah, you know, I wonder what symbolism there would be when it comes to an early 50s novel with themes of censorship and authoritarianism. Oh my god. Man, I don't know. Almost all dystopian novels have like the same tone. But you know, I'll say, especially toward the latter half of the book, the tone gets kind of dire and serious and uneasy, I guess you could put it, which kind of reflects with the circumstances and Montag's whole mental. Alright, when it comes to theme, I'd say it stays pretty straightforward. It's just relatively surface level stuff about government censorship being bad and I guess discourse being good, which admittedly might be bland. However, I'm sure you're happy I didn't take it in the same direction this guy did.
This guy was talking about censorship and woke culture and cancel culture 70 years ago.
Okay, when it comes to my overall thoughts on the book, it's fine. I feel like being required to read it probably hampered my ability to fully enjoy it. But still, on top of that, it did exceed my expectations. So, yeah, it's alright, it's fine.